Let's find these facts. Number 10. The rat dungeon. People who were sentenced to death were locked in a small, dark room full of rats as part of this particularly scary form of punishment. Rats would start to eat the victim's meat because they were hungry and desperate. Along with the physical pain of being bitten and scratched, the mental fear was unbearable. The rats might leave cuts that get infected over time, which could cause more pain and death from blood loss, infection, or just fear. This method was meant to hurt the target physically and break their spirit by making them feel alone and afraid all the time. Number 9. The rack. The rack was one of the most notorious torture devices of medieval Europe. It consisted of a rectangular wooden frame with a roller at one or both ends. The victim's wrists were tied to the top roller and their ankles to the bottom one. As the rollers were turned, the victim's body was gradually stretched, causing excruciating pain. The pressure would eventually dislocate the joints, tear ligaments and muscles, and sometimes even sever limbs. This method was primarily used to extract confessions or information. Victims would often confess to anything just to make the torture stop, making it both a physical and psychological weapon. Number 8. Keel hauling. Practiced by European navies, particularly in the 17th and 18th centuries, keel hauling involved tying a sailor with ropes and dragging them under the keel of the ship. The victim would be scraped by barnacles and other marine growths, often leading to severe injuries or drowning. The process was excruciatingly painful and terrifying, as the sailor was repeatedly dragged through the cold, dark water, sustaining deep cuts and abrasions. Keel hauling was both a physical and psychological ordeal, serving as a brutal punishment and a powerful deterrent to others. Number 7. Crushed by elephant. An ancient form of execution used in South and Southeast Asia, being crushed by an elephant was a method reserved for severe crimes. The condemned was placed before an elephant trained to crush their head or limbs. The execution was a public spectacle, showcasing the might of the ruler and the elephant's power. The crushing could be quick or prolonged, with the elephant trained to inflict maximum pain before delivering the fatal blow. This method was both a severe punishment and a display of authority and control. Number 6. Impalement. Used notably by Vlad the Impaler, impalement involved driving a sharpened stake through the victim's body, often starting at the rectum or vagina and exiting through the mouth, shoulders, or neck. The stake was carefully inserted to avoid major organs, prolonging the agony. Death could take hours or even days. This method was not only incredibly painful, but also a public spectacle designed to instill fear and demonstrate the absolute power of the ruler. Impaled victims were often displayed along public roads or at city entrances as a grim warning. Number 5. The leather sack. Poena cule. It's a form of capital punishment in ancient Rome. Poena cule involved sewing the condemned into a leather sack along with different live animals like snakes, dogs, or monkeys, and then throwing the sack into water. The combined fear of the confined space, the attacks from the animals, and the impending drowning created a multifaceted torture. This punishment was often saved for parricides, those who killed a parent. The leather sack, known as a coulée, added an element of psychological torment, as the victim was fully aware of the horrifying ordeal facing them. Number 4. The rat bowl and tube. This gruesome method involved placing a rat in a metal container against the victim's abdomen. The container was then heated, causing the rat to seek escape by burrowing through the victim's flesh. This form of torture was used to extract confessions or as a punishment. The process was unimaginably painful, as the rat would create a tunnel through the victim's body, leading to severe internal injuries, infection, and ultimately death. The psychological horror of feeling the rat inside the body added to the torture's effectiveness. Number 3. Gibbeting, human cages. Used in medieval and early modern Europe, gibbeting involved placing the condemned in a metal cage and suspending them from a post. The person was left to die from exposure, dehydration, or starvation, while their decaying body served as a deterrent to others. The psychological and physical torment of being exposed to the elements, along with the public humiliation of dying in such a manner, made gibbeting a feared punishment. The cages, often left in prominent public locations, served as grim reminders of the consequences of crime. Number 2. Scaphism, the boats. An ancient Persian execution method, Scaphism involved trapping the victim between two boats or hollowed-out tree trunks. They were force-fed milk and honey, attracting insects and vermin that would slowly consume their flesh. The victim was left exposed to the elements, their body becoming increasingly infected and eaten alive by insects. This method was designed to be as prolonged and painful as possible, combining elements of starvation, exposure, and the agony of being eaten alive. Number 1. The oubliette dungeon. An oubliette was a type of dungeon with a narrow entrance, often a trap door, leading to a small, dark cell. The name comes from the French word oublier, meaning to forget, as prisoners were often left to die slowly from starvation and neglect in complete darkness and isolation. The oubliette was designed to be a place of slow torment, where the prisoner would experience the agony of being forgotten, left to die in a confined, lightless space with minimal human contact or sustenance.